One disappointment that has become increasingly common is a series not reaching their conclusion. I think everyone has their own series that they wish would continue, with there being countless other examples throughout the years. While it's easy to lament experiences cut short, every now and then something beats the odds. Among those examples is the Request series, which didn't just get a sequel, but a spin-off as well. With it being the latest game to try their luck at the roguelike genre, is it thematically perfect or does it fall short of expectation? Before getting into this review, I want to highlight a couple of things I think are important. While the franchise has maintained an M rating in the United States, Japan's serial rating went from a D to their highest level, Z. It is a small distinction, but I wanted to highlight it because the content is considered a level higher than the previous entries. Especially since things were a bit murky, as an Idea Factory International representative told Gematsu it did not comply with Nintendo guidelines in the West. I can also tell you I think it is slightly more intense than previous entries, though not enough where I think anyone on the fence would need to tap out. Still, to prevent issues, I will limit as much of this as possible in the review and not monetize this video. For this reason, I would greatly appreciate any likes, comments, or subscribes so I can continue to cover things like this in the future. Another thing I wanted to touch on is previous knowledge. Code Z is not the third entry, but rather the aforementioned spin-off. It does not explicitly require previous knowledge, though it helps a bit. A lot of the dialogue will reintroduce these characters and add other background information. There are also a couple options that cater to returning fans over newcomers. Overall, I wouldn't worry about it. However, anyone intrigued by the experience should check out the previous two mainline entries, as the third is in development.
冗談ですよ。ただね、そしてもう一人。私の隣のこのルーで。そのまま。
The adventure begins a few months in the future with a twisted version of Mizunashi, speaking in a cryptic way. Fighting against him are the protagonists of the first two games, with the Code Z1 seemingly aiding him. After this, the adventure moves a few months into the past and introduces these characters and the world itself. The plot can be interesting at times, though it frequently diverges in lighthearted or fun tangents. At this point, players can opt to view optional events or focus solely on the core narrative. The optional events range from moments with these characters to joke-heavy interactions. Fans of things like Neptunia will likely enjoy this approach, whereas anyone hoping for something different will not. Over time, players will meet Mizunashi, be introduced to their plan, and ultimately try to achieve the future they want. It is an okay adventure, with the main appeal being the fluff in between, or seeing a familiar face from a previous adventure.
食事の際の作法は幼少時から徹底的に教え込まれたので。さすがリリーだよね。ただ食事をしているだけで絵になるんだもん。いいな。私もリリーくらい綺麗に食べたい。でもやっぱり難しいか。職業柄どうしても早食いみたいになっちゃうし。私はシーナの豪快な食べ方も好きですよ。本当に美味しそうに料理を頬張るんですもの。見ているこっちまで笑顔になれちゃいます。そう言ってもらえると。
While most of this adventure is a visual novel, there are the occasional roguelike dungeon that needs to be completed. For the most part, these stages are incredibly simple. There is a map, some enemies, various items, and an exit. The goal is to run around, defeat any enemies on the map, and ultimately find the exit before losing your sanity. For better or worse, combat is largely trading blows. It can be a bit cumbersome, as characters frequently fight enemies with advantageous buffs or miss attacks, as it adds a bit of depth to the loop beyond just pushing attack. That said, the experience suffers from two massive negatives. The first is inventory management, which can honestly take more time than the dungeon itself. This is largely due to the core gameplay loop and small carrying capacity. Since higher difficulties remove items on failure, the idea is to constantly cycle between loot. It is a nice idea. I mean, there is a reason why stockpiling supplies in an RPG is a meme, but the small inventory limits strategy. For example, there are items that boost attack, defense, reveals traps, and so forth. These work for a period of time, such as 10 turns or a specific floor. Where this becomes annoying is the small limit. Progression increases the overall size, so I tried at about the halfway point. At this time, I had 22 slots, deposited everything I had besides my sword, and cataloged 2 runs. On the first attempt, I obtained 19 drops by floor 6 out of 10. On the second attempt, I had 26 by the time I reached the 5th floor. So even after starting with no items, I would spend roughly half of the dungeon either using them or deciding between things. It just isn't very fun. This brings me to the other, far bigger issue, luck. Now I should note, I am a big fan of the roguelike genre. Odds are if you are familiar with this channel, you remember me from my Enter the Gungeon guides. In addition to that, I was the first person on PlayStation profiles to platinum Dead Cells, among other things. What I like about these games is trying to make the most of your luck. Sometimes it is really good, other times extremely bad, but there is a sense of give and take. I'm honestly fine with having an incredibly poor run of Enter the Gungeon because it's possible to have a broken one. That balance keeps things interesting and exciting. However, Code Z doesn't really have any highs. The best case scenario were runs where nothing bad happened, and the bad runs were those where nothing worked in your favor. This is only further exasperated by the inventory system. Let me explain using the aforementioned runs. On my first attempt, the one where I got 19 items, I failed on the 6th floor. Honestly, absolutely nothing went in my favor on that attempt. Not only did I get 0 ether codes, which is an item that increases your sanity, I had the glitch scroll attack 3 different times, these being optional quasi-boss enemies that randomly appear in the run. So I was either going to fail due to confusion damage, or fail because I simply couldn't deal with that many bosses. And, mind you, I still had another 4 floors, 1 boss that I needed to defeat, and even if I survived, I would still need to run the dungeon backwards to extract. On my 26 item attempt, I got 10 ether codes and 0 glitch scrolls. It was pain-free, I won with relative ease, and nothing extremely bad happened. Now, I honestly wouldn't mind this experience if the item management side wasn't so annoying. I could use an item to prevent a fatal blow, another to increase my turn speed, debuff the boss, or buff myself to overcome these obstacles. However, doing all of this requires at least 3 specific items on top of anything else. Like, I typically transform to deal additional damage. This utilizes a gauge, one that does not quickly fill. So it might work on 2 different encounters well spread out, just not on any in quick succession. Ignoring the gauge requirement, the run where I fought 3 girls would require at least 9 items. This does not even include bringing a few ether codes to mitigate bad luck. At this point, half of my inventory is devoted to dealing with the specific event, which means anytime I run into a new item, I'd either need to leave it or use something to pick it up. Again, it really isn't a massive problem, it just makes things needlessly annoying. Especially when, again, the best outcome you could hope for is no glitch scrolls and a healthy mix of healing items. It also doesn't help that the experience itself is rather inconsistent. Usually glitch scrolls have a spawn animation, one that tells players where they happen to be. I've done several runs where this does not occur. I'm caught off guard and either lose or take more damage than I otherwise would. Other times the lack of consistent ether or health items cause an issue. I understand random is as random does, but usually these games have some kind of system to prevent this. Even small changes would go far for overall enjoyment, like glitch scrolls can quickly destroy exits, so even leaving them alive might cause an issue long term. They can also spawn in such a way where avoiding confrontation is impossible. While a lot of this review has focused on questionable roguelike mechanics, I will say the failure screens are quite nice. Enemies get specific dialogue, and in some cases even a brutal image showcasing what happened. It makes getting skill points, which are awarded from losses, a lot easier to chase after. At least I found myself opting to lose specific engagements just to see what would happen. It is a big part of the original experience, and I'm glad they kept it, even if that is likely part of the reason why the roguelike section is so frustrating. Unsurprisingly, Code Z is going to cater to fans of the first 2 games. It isn't the type of spin-off that brings a new group into the world, but rather allows existing fans a new way to explore the adventure. Now, it would be nice if things were a bit more balanced, or at least less annoying to play, but at least there is a reward for losing. Plus, increasing the overall intensity makes those ends far more interesting. For these reasons, I think fans will greatly enjoy it, whereas those who didn't like the previous ones, or Neptunia's overall approach will likely find it frustrating. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, and for more content, please subscribe.